Hello, Archie Dunlop here with Talking Astrology with Archie on Tuesday, May the 7th, 2024. Tomorrow there is a new moon. It's a new moon in Taurus, and already today, on Tuesday, the moon is in Taurus. So I thought I would take this opportunity to look at what it means to have the moon in Taurus. And I'm just going to look at the charts of people who have this sign placement. It in theory should be fortunate. After all, the moon is exalted in Taurus, and you can see in the thumbnail for people who do have the moon in Taurus, there's Karl Marx, one of the founders of communism. We've got Queen Elizabeth I, who many people in the UK regard as Britain or England's, certainly England's greatest monarch. We have got Nayib Bukele, who is the president of El Salvador, and Tucker Carlson, and I'll be looking at a few others. But first of all, I want to look at the astrology and the I Ching for today, which is Tuesday, May the 7th, 2024. So there you can see that today, well, that's actually Monica Lewinsky's chart. I might be talking about her later. She's got the moon in Taurus, but that's a chart for today, Tuesday, May the 7th, 2024, set for New York at noon. And you can see at New York at noon, the moon is at 11 degrees Taurus. And we're in the run-up to the new moon. So the moon is waning. This is the end of the lunar cycle today. And we might feel like that. Something is coming to an end. It's probably not a good day for starting things. It's more of a day for wrapping things up. Though we can't deny that there's a lot of stuff in Taurus today. I mean, Venus is in Taurus, Moon is in Taurus, Sun is in Taurus, Uranus is in Taurus, Jupiter is in Taurus. So, half the usual planets are in Taurus. So this may be a day when many of us are quite stubborn. And also with Taurus, we may put a high premium on things we can touch. That kind of depends on us. For some of us, it might be money. We can touch money. We can feel the cash. Or it may go further than that. I mean, there are some people, for example, that think that the dollar and fiat currencies are in a state of collapse. So maybe the only thing you can really touch is gold. Maybe. Bitcoin, can you touch Bitcoin? I don't know. But there is a concern about things you can touch. Can you really hold it? Can you feel it? And that could be part and parcel of what it means to have the moon in Taurus. It is a stubborn sign, moon in Taurus, and Taurus is a stubborn sign. The moon in Taurus can be a stubborn placement, as I will be discussing later. So people may not be ready to compromise today. We may not be ready to compromise, and we may be quite persistent that our way is the best way. And one of the main aspects today is a moon square Pluto. So the moon square Pluto, more at the beginning of the day. But with moon square Pluto, that adds to what I was saying about the stubbornness of the day. Pluto can get quite obsessed. It makes a decision and it gets really focused. It wants to do it at all costs. But you have to ask yourself whether that obsession is really worth it. But another aspect that the moon is making, a very fortunate aspect, is moon conjunct Venus. I mean, that's very nice. The moon is exalted in Taurus. Venus is in its own sign in Taurus. So moon conjunct Venus can be very good for relationships, for getting on with people, and for enjoying the good things in life. It can, in certain instances, encourage us to overspend. But in a way, that moon conjunct Venus is overshadowed by the sun. You know, whatever we're doing today, we have to realize that it is just before the new moon. So we have to ask ourselves, is it going to go beyond that? Sorry, did I say full moon? I meant new moon. So it's just before the new moon. By the way, in this video, if I do occasionally say new moon instead of full moon instead of new moon, it's not that I don't know the difference. It's just sometimes a slip of the tongue. It does happen in these videos. I go on for 2 hours, and I will sometimes make a mistake. I don't know. I was looking about the German Defense Minister, Boris Pistorius, and I think I said he had Saturn opposition Mercury yesterday, and in fact he's got Saturn conjunct Mercury. It's not that I don't know the difference between a conjunction and opposition, but it's just that sometimes I make that slip. So bear with me with these 2-hour videos. They're not edited. I don't read them. I don't look through them before I put them out. But yes, it's a new moon, not a full moon coming up, and we do have to bear that in mind. It's the end of the cycle, so whatever we're enjoying today may not persist beyond the new moon. Stability. The sun. The sun is sextile Saturn. Very nice aspect, the sun sextile Saturn, and it allows us to create some order. And if things have been a bit chaotic and boundaries have got breached, that sun sextile Saturn allows us to bring things back into order. You know, that sun in Taurus, sextile Saturn in Pisces. Sun in Taurus knows what's important, and Saturn knows what's important. And so if things have got a bit chaotic, then that sun sextile Saturn is really going to help out. Finally, there is a conjunction between Chiron and Mercury. This can have different meanings. One way of looking at it is that Chiron can be seen as the healer, the wounded healer. Mercury is about how we communicate. And so we are able to heal through our words, perhaps, if we use our words carefully. We can, perhaps benefit if we are psychotherapists, for example, the talking cure. So if someone's in trouble, in psychological trouble, I don't want to sort of make a big thing about it, make it clinical. No, I'm not talking necessarily about anything clinical, but if someone's bothered about something, our words can make a big difference. Though Chiron is also the maverick. I mean, after all, the man who discovered Chiron, Charles Cowell, he noted that Chiron had a very maverick. It was elliptical orbit. That's the phrase. It had a very elliptical orbit, and as a result, he said it was a maverick. So the discoverer of Chiron called it a maverick. So I think we really should respect the discoverer of Chiron and see its maverick qualities. And with Chiron conjunct Mercury, we can be a maverick through the things we say. Remember, Mercury conjunct Chiron is in Aries. So some of us may not want to heal through our words, but we may want to actually disrupt through our words, doing things that are unexpected, that might force people to look at things in a different way. It might not make us popular, but it might be the right thing to do. So that's a broad picture of the geocentric solar system from our perspective down here on Earth. But of course, the solar system is centered around the sun by definition, so it's always a good idea to look at the heliocentric solar system. So let us turn to that. So that's a position of the solar system at noon today in New York. I don't think that there's a great deal to report here. We can see that Mars and Saturn are getting closer. I mentioned yesterday that we have the growing influence of a Mars-Saturn conjunction. Mercury is moving away from the sextile to Mars, but I think we're probably still feeling that. That yesterday we had the exact sextile between Mercury and Mars. Today it's separating, but I think we might still feel that, being able to express ourselves with a certain amount of energy and enthusiasm. I think that sextile, by and large, is pretty fortunate. And then we look at the Earth. The Earth is moving towards an opposition to Uranus, opposition to Jupiter. So an Earth opposition Jupiter is the same as a Sun conjunct Jupiter. So what we're seeing here with the Earth making that opposition to Jupiter Uranus is what we already know from a geocentric perspective, but it's rather nice to see it as the Earth opposition Jupiter rather than Earth conjunct Jupiter, so rather than Sun conjunct Jupiter, because it reminds us that we are on the Earth, and so if things are hitting the Earth, that has a special connection there. And so I think that we would perhaps be advised to see Sun conjunct Jupiter, for example, as being Earth opposition Jupiter, because it does show the dynamic tension there, and it also reminds us that it affects us down here on Earth. One final thing to point out is Venus. Venus is about to change signs heliocentrically. At the moment, I'm not really bothering too much about heliocentric sign changes. I do believe that some people using heliocentric astrology do use heliocentric sign changes, especially when they're trying to make stock market predictions, because astrologers who try to predict the stock market very often use heliocentric astrology. I mean, I think that may be the principal use of heliocentric astrology, assuming it works. But the point about Venus's sign change, Venus moving into Taurus, is it will be making a square to Pluto. So we've had geocentrically, we've just had a Venus square Pluto, but we're about to get a geocentric square, and I suppose it's starting to happen. I think the square is probably going to be exact tomorrow, but we're starting to feel heliocentric Venus square Pluto, and that might link up with like today we've got Moon square Pluto geocentrically, but we've also got Venus square Pluto heliocentrically. So I think that certain relationships may have a somewhat obsessive quality with that Venus square Pluto. But that's the broad heliocentric picture. I'm not saying there's a huge amount going on. And I suppose the thing to be most aware of is the fact that the Mars and Saturn are slowly moving towards a conjunction with each other. And of course, that is a heliocentric conjunction. Turning to the 12 signs, I'm, as usual, now going to do my forecast for the 12 signs for today, which is Tuesday, May the 7th, 2024. 2024. So here goes. Here are my forecasts. Aries. There is a rather mixed picture today. On one hand, Aries, you are trying to bring things down to earth. You know, recently there has been a lot going on, hasn't there? I mean, you had all those planets in your sign not so long ago, but they're now, the emphasis is on Taurus. It's you know, we've got so much stuff in Taurus. We've now got Venus in Taurus, Moon in Taurus, Sun in Taurus, Uranus in Taurus, Jupiter in Taurus. And with these planets in Taurus, it may just incline you to be more relaxed and perhaps to consider what matters on a material level. Now, from a financial perspective, I think many Arians are feeling that, yeah, money does matter, that everything has a cost, that the books have to balance, and I think it's going to be important to you to be properly valued. And because value is a big deal with these Taurus placements from an Aries perspective. In a way, it's existential, isn't it? If you're paid a certain amount for your time or your effort, that is a mark of how you are valued as a person. And if you are in a situation where you are being paid, then do consider what that means and ask yourself perhaps whether you're being paid enough. And even if you're not working, I think that right now, Aries, you're going to be very keen to be given what you're owed. So if something is owed to you, I think you're going to want it. And it might feel rather beneath you to have to chase money. Because Aries, as a sign, in a broad sense, isn't particularly materialistic. But right now, if something is owed to you, I think perhaps you should use your Aries energy to try and get it. I did say yesterday that you should get going on it as soon as possible, and I did suggest that if you didn't act yesterday, it might be too late. So what am I saying now? Is it too late? No, I don't think it is too late. I mean, I perhaps said it was too late yesterday to try and encourage you to get going on it, but it's not too late. If something is owed to you, you should really go for it. And perhaps you should at least get going on it before the new moon. You know, we've got a new moon tomorrow. That's a new cycle, and the new moon, tomorrow's new moon, does have an impact on your finances. But I'll discuss that tomorrow. I'm not saying it's a bad impact. I'm just saying it's going to have an impact. So I did suggest that it was a mixed day, and I've talked about the financial side of things, the material side of things. But we also have to consider the fact that there is a conjunction between Mercury and Chiron. And this Mercury-Chiron conjunction is taking place in your sign. And Mercury, is still in Aries. I know a lot of stuff has been moving out of Aries, but Mercury is still there. And Mars is still in Aries. So Aries is still a sign that has a lot of emphasis there. With Mars, North Node, Chiron, Mercury in this sign. And with Mercury conjunct Chiron, you may have an impulse to say things and be very direct about it. And you're not going to worry too much about the consequences. And the things you say could be very beneficial, could be actually very healing. I mentioned this in the introduction, that Mercury conjunct Chiron can be about helping people through your words. You perhaps understand that someone's got a problem or got something bothering them, and then you just intervene and you say something, and just saying something very simple can be all it takes to help move someone along. Maybe actually someone is stuck and they can't work out what to do, and they just need an enthusiastic Aries to just tell them, just go and do it, do this, it's okay, it'll be fine. But Chiron can be the maverick. Mercury conjunct Chiron can be about saying things that people weren't expecting, that just seem out of sync with reality, and could be very confusing, could be perturbing. And actually, Aries, the things you say, I won't say could cause damage, but they could cause distress. But maybe that's the right thing to do. You know, people can be very complacent. They can just be living their lives in the usual way, not asking questions. But Aries can come along and change things, particularly if we're an Aries at a time when Mercury is conjunct Chiron. Perhaps Aries, you'll see that something is wrong, that people are being complacent, that people are missing the important details, or they're perhaps too focused on the wrong details, and you can just change everything by what you say. Now, I'm not saying that that's the approach you should take, but it's an approach that should perhaps be considered, and it may actually be what you need to do, remembering that the North Node is in Aries, and very widely there's a North Node Chiron Mercury conjunction. Perhaps there's an obligation to say something. You may get negative feedback, but perhaps that's what you're supposed to be doing. Taurus. There is now a big build-up in your sign. We've got 5 planets in Taurus. We've got Moon, Venus, Sun, Uranus, Jupiter, and of course tomorrow, Taurus, we do have a new moon in your sign, and I think that this indicates a big focus on you. You do have a lot of power, and I think it's a time when you really can make things happen. And perhaps also it is a time of preparation. Okay, the new moon is tomorrow, and it's often said that if you're planning on big initiatives, you should wait until after the new moon. That's true, but at the same time, today there is a Moon-Venus conjunction, and it's a very nice conjunction between the Moon and Venus, and it's a conjunction that can be very good for relationships, because the Moon and Venus are two planets that are often connected with relationships, and when they are both in Taurus, they're both in signs where they work very well in. I mean, Venus is in its own sign in Taurus, Moon is exalted in Taurus, and I think you know how to make people feel comfortable. And I think if you're in a relationship, you can really make that relationship work. Though it's just important not to do anything dramatic. It's not really about excitement, it's about stability and being able to get close to people, and very often without having to say anything. And so, Taurus, you can really take advantage of this, by getting close to the people you want to get close to. Though I think, Taurus, you are going to have a strong sense, though, of what you want. yes, in terms of relationships. I think that Taurians can reduce things to their material reality, and I suppose their material basics. And so I think you're going to understand that every relationship you're in has a purpose, has a reason, and there's something you perhaps want from every relationship you're in, even if you're not absolutely honest about that. And right now, that desire is powerful. And I think you shouldn't underestimate how much you're able to influence the people close to you. Can you manipulate them? It is possible. And I talked about this moon square Pluto. Now, moon square Pluto, by and large, is an aspect that is separating. In fact, I think if you're in the Americas, it was more of a feature of yesterday. But we still have a situation where the moon is in your sign. Pluto is in Aquarius, which is a very high-profile sign from a Taurian view. And I think that moon square Pluto does make you quite ambitious, especially at the beginning of the day. And I think, Taurus, there are definitely going to be things that you want, especially if you're working, if you're in a high-profile environment. Yeah, clear sense of the way things should be. And being a Taurus, you can be very stubborn. You have a clear idea about what you want. And this is further emphasized by the fact that from a heliocentric perspective, Venus is actually square Pluto. So it's true that moon square Pluto is separating, but Venus square Pluto is very real today from a heliocentric perspective. And Venus is your ruler. And so with that square to Pluto from a heliocentric perspective, you are very focused on what you want. And I think in terms of relationships, although I think you're going to be very good at dealing with your various relationships, because I think you'll know how to behave, I think at the same time you're also going to have an awareness of the power dynamic. So when you're involved with someone on a one-to-one level, you're always thinking, who has the power? Who doesn't have the power? What is needed to increase one's power? What would make one lose one's power? These kinds of questions might, in certain situations, be bothering you, particularly if it's a new relationship or a relationship that is temporary and is formed around an objective. So, for example, if you have got together with someone because you and this other person both want the same thing, and once you've got that same thing, once you've got this thing, the relationship is going to perhaps break up. So if it's focused around a common goal, then it might be a case where you're thinking, well, is it really a common goal? Who's going to benefit and who's going to lose? You might even think it's some sort of zero-sum situation with Venus square Pluto, and that might lead to the concept of a power struggle if you take it too seriously. But it may be you seeing the struggle and the other person just not being aware that there's a struggle, and perhaps that goes back to what I'm suggesting, that maybe today, in terms of one-to-one relationships, Taurus, then you may be ever so slightly manipulative. Whether or not that's a good thing does rather depend on the situation. Gemini. It's a time, Gemini, when you may feel that there's actually not much you want to do, because we've got this big build-up in Taurus, and Taurus is obviously the sign preceding Gemini. And with this build-up in Taurus, it just may feel that it's not your time yet, because what we've been getting over the last few months is we've got this huge batch of planets slowly moving through the signs of the zodiac. A few months ago there was a huge concentration of planets in Pisces, and then it moved on to Aries. Now Taurus has all the focus, but very soon it's going to be Gemini that gets the focus. But Gemini is not getting the focus quite yet, and you may therefore feel that you're backstage. You can see the play, you can see all the actors on stage, but as far as you're concerned, well, it's still Act 1 and you're not on until Act 3, so nothing much to be done. That might be your view. But I do think it's a time for preparation. Soon enough, planets will start going into Gemini, and the Gemini season will start. It'll be your birthday soon, isn't it? It's going to be my birthday soon. But the Sun, for example, is at 17 Taurus, so in less than 2 weeks, the Sun is going to be in Gemini. The Moon will be in Gemini, actually, in a couple of days' time. So get ready for it, and don't feel that there's just nothing to be done, because there is stuff to be done. And from a Gemini perspective, you could say that the most important aspect today is a conjunction between Mercury and Chiron. Mercury is your ruler, and it's conjunct Chiron. And there are a number of ways this can play out for you. So some Geminis may feel, with Mercury conjunct Chiron, that they are being rejected. And that would support your idea that now is not the time. You just might feel that, for example, that your friends can't deal with you, or your friends haven't got time for you, and that might bother you. It shouldn't bother you if that is the case. You can't be with people all the time. But more fundamentally, if you are feeling that you are a little bit of an outcast, then that might actually be healthy, because when you're feeling yourself to be separate and even rejected, that allows you to become more independent, and you start to develop self-awareness. I mean, after all, if you're with other people and you're the centre of attention and you're wonderfully popular, there's no need to be self-aware. There's absolutely no need. You're just going with the flow. But you're not going with the flow. And because you're not going with the flow, you're seeing things in an independent way. And because of your independent mindedness, you can potentially reassert yourself. You have a different perspective, and other people may not fully like you or trust you, but that independent perspective is very much there, and it's waiting to be expressed. And once you find the right way of expressing it, you will be surprised at the impact you have. After all, Chiron is the maverick, and Gemini today can be the maverick. And I think at a certain level, you're not going to care. I mean, a lot of people, they think carefully about what they're going to say. Am I going to cause offence? Maybe I shouldn't say it. I don't think Gemini's going to really care. Even if Gemini does care, Gemini is going to still say, well, it's got to be said, isn't it? I mean, that's a general Gemini view. It's got to be said. But it's not just about causing a disturbance. It's not just about, what do they say? disturbing the comfortable, isn't it? Yeah. Well, you can disturb the comfortable today, very much so. So if people are comfortable, because you're not entirely comfortable, and because you're not entirely comfortable today, you're in a great position to disturb those who are comfortable by the things you say. But you can also comfort the disturbed. After all, Mercury is conjunct Chiron. There is a healing element to that. Chiron is a healer. Mercury is you, it's what you say, and you perhaps have a perspective on what it means to be an outcast, to be separate. And so if you find someone else who is feeling alone and separate and not happy, you are in a very good position to say something about it, say something to them, address their issues, and I think you can perhaps explain to someone that they're not alone, and that whatever they're experiencing, it's not some unique drama and trauma, but it's not as bad as it feels. And so in that sense, Gemini, you can be something of a healer. And while this is going on, Gemini, you're a little bit concerned about what's happening in the world at large, because Mercury, which is your ruler, is on the Jupiter-Saturn midpoint. It's actually conjunct the Jupiter-Saturn midpoint. And I do talk about this aspect of a Jupiter-Saturn midpoint quite regularly when it crops up. And Jupiter-Saturn as a pair are about bringing together the concepts of expansion and retraction. And that means that Jupiter-Saturn as a pair are very often connected with the economy. And so with Mercury on a Jupiter-Saturn midpoint, you have an economic awareness. You can kind of feel the way the economy is going. And that doesn't mean to say that you have to be completely fluent with interest rates and bond yields and what the Federal Reserve is going to do next. It would probably help if you were to be fluent with all that kind of stuff. But you just have a feel for the way the economy is going. And you know that what's happening in the wider economy is going to impact you and everyone else around you. And you, I think, actually have an intuition about it. And perhaps you should give it some thought. And that might help in terms of aligning yourself for future challenges. And maybe this actually goes back also to this Mercury conjunct Chiron, because I talked about disturbing the comfortable with Mercury conjunct Chiron, and there are people out there who seem to be oblivious to what's going on in the economy. They think that everything is going to be fine. They trust what their governments are telling them. I'm not going to be specific. They just believe it. And you know, Gemini, if you're honest with yourself, that it's not fine. And you might want to tell people that it's not fine. You know, that whole concept of, eat, drink and be merry, for tomorrow we die. That might be the kind of thing you might be saying. Yeah, enjoy it while it lasts, because it's not going to last forever. You can see that, and you have this insight. Maybe you're going to be a Cassandra and no one is going to listen to you, but I think you can see the future, at least in an economic sense. I mean, I'm not saying that for sure, by the way. I have to be careful. I have to remember that this this video is for entertainment purposes only. So I'm not saying that if you absolutely understand the way the economy is going, or you think you understand it, you are in the right. I'm not saying that because I don't want you to encourage you to make decisions or take actions which are self-destructive. So do see that in this light, but do consider the possibility, Gemini, that you know what's going on economically. Cancer. There is a big build-up in Taurus, and we've got the sun and moon in Taurus, and tomorrow we've got a new moon in Taurus. And as we know, Cancerians are really very sensitive to the lunar cycle, new moons, full moons. You can feel them, and you can feel this new moon coming up tomorrow, and you're perhaps in a state of preparation for it. But I don't think it's a time to just be standing on the sidelines. I think that there are very much people to interact with, because the moon is conjunct Venus. Moon, your ruler, in Taurus, which is the sign of its exaltation. Moon is exalted in Taurus. It's conjunct Venus, which is a fortunate planet, the lesser benefic. So with Moon conjunct Venus, you're really able to come over well. You can express yourself and your personality in a way that's very effective, that's not going to upset people, and I think that you're going to be popular, and I think that people are going to like you. So it's just important that you are out there and that you are having a high profile life as much as is possible. But it's not about wild excitement. The moon is in Taurus. Taurus is an earth sign. It's fixed. It's not about showing off, creating explosions. It's just about calmly interacting with people and reinforcing existing relationships, making them stronger. And if you want to meet new people, get on with new people. I think that you can do it, because overall, Cancer, you're going to come over as being someone who really can be trusted. Arguably, right now, you're the most trustworthy person of all the 12 signs. So take advantage of that. And because people are at the moment trusting you, it's nice. But if you're a Cancerian, you've always got one eye on your own self-interest. Let's be honest about it. And so if people are starting to trust you, then this is a situation that I think you can certainly benefit from. So really take every opportunity to mix with people, and also to consider how other people might help you to achieve some of your aims. By aims, I'm not really talking about necessarily material aims, but perhaps your hopes for the future. You have hopes for the future, and through other people, you may start to realize that some of your hopes for the future are actually realistic, and they can happen. From a career perspective, if you're working today, you may actually be a little bit disappointed by something. You may get some news, or someone may say something that does bother you. It makes you perhaps worry whether someone really knows what they're doing. I mean, you perhaps thought that someone was aware of what was happening, and they say something which perhaps demonstrates their ignorance, And that could bother you a bit. And I think you perhaps have to ask yourself why it might bother you. And I suppose it might bother you because you realize perhaps that you're the one who really knows what's going on. And in a career perspective, you can't perhaps trust anyone else because you have the knowledge. And that might be a little bit overwhelming, a little bit bothering, a little bit bothering for you. But it's the way it goes, because right now, as I've said on numerous occasions to you, that the North Node is in Aries, and Aries is a sign in the Cancer chart which is very much perspective, which is very much connected with career, and so it continues to be a situation, Cancer, where you have to be prepared to exercise leadership. And one reason for that, as I've just said, is because some of the people you're working with, working under, working over, are just not up to it. And you're the only one that knows what's going on. Finishing up with relationships, I think overall, Cancer, the emphasis today should be on collective relationships, relationships with the group, rather than with people on a one-to-one basis. I don't think if you spend too much time with someone on a one-to-one basis, you're going to feel that it's a particularly satisfying situation. I mean, not because anything bad is going on, but it just, you might feel that your energies might be better placed somewhere else. Though the people really close to you do seem to have a great desire for closeness and community, and I suppose you have to look at people individually and say, what do they want? They do want closeness. They do want to be part of something. And so perhaps you have to respect that. So if you are spending a lot of time with someone, you're forced to spend a lot of time with someone, do respect that need on their part and see whether you can provide that need without compromising yourself. And maybe what's needed is that you need to rechannel someone's energy. So if you're spending time with someone, there are things they want and they think they can get what they want in a particular way. And perhaps what you have to do is persuade them perhaps that they can get what they want, but perhaps they've been choosing the wrong methods. And perhaps it's all about redirection, if that makes sense. Leo. It's a time, Leo, when I think that you are pretty ambitious. And I think you should be ambitious, because there is a huge amount of stuff going on in Taurus. There are now 5 planets in Taurus: Venus, Moon, Sun, Jupiter, Uranus. They're all bunched together in Taurus, and Taurus is a sign that is very ambitious from a Leo perspective. There are things you want, and you want them now. And tomorrow there is a new moon in Taurus. So with that new moon in Taurus, it might be a time when you can dedicate yourself to a new ambition. Okay, that ambition has its roots in the past, and you are building up on that. And so Taurus, Leo, don't miss out on this opportunity, because these planets in Taurus, soon enough, many of them are going to move into Gemini. And once they've moved into Gemini, to an extent, you will have missed your moment. So do consider all the things that you want right now. particularly things connected with status and power and career and respect. Consider all of those things and consider how you are going to get them. And also, a big point to make here is that Jupiter has been moving through Taurus for a long time. And Jupiter very soon, I think later this month, Jupiter moves out of Taurus into Gemini. You want to make the most of everything that Jupiter has got to offer. So really, don't hold back and allow yourself to be optimistic. In fact, the more optimistic you can be, the better, because the Sun, which is your ruler, is aspecting the Venus-Jupiter midpoint. In fact, the new moon tomorrow is on the Venus-Jupiter midpoint. That shows how close we are to the new moon. And so with Sun on the Venus-Jupiter midpoint, actually today you are quite lucky. And at the same time, you can be super optimistic. So if you're optimistic about something, you're really excited about something, you're really thinking that it can happen, yes, I think your intuition is correct. It can happen. And things are looking really good. But you must understand that nothing is given to you on a silver plate. Nothing. I mean, I'm not saying that for you personally. That is a problem with being an astrologer, trying to give people astrological advice. You see something good coming up, and you think, well, something good is coming up. You tell someone something good is coming up, and how are they going to respond to it? They're going to respond by just saying, great. They'll just hang around and wait for something good to hang up, and just something good to turn up. And astrology never works out like that. And it's almost like by making the prediction, oh, something is good is going to come up, you actually allow someone to relax, and almost by making the prediction, you stop it happening, which is a terrible thing. So when I tell you that Sun is on the Venus-Jupiter, is aspecting a Venus-Jupiter midpoint, that the new moon tomorrow is on the Venus-Jupiter midpoint, that is not an invitation to just give up and saying, oh, well, nothing that needs to be done. It's good, it's coming your way. No, you've got to really push. That's what the cosmos expects of you. If you do nothing, if you're lazy, then you're going to be very disappointed. So you've got to really work hard to see that Sun on the Venus-Jupiter midpoint. Okay, you may be lucky, it may come your way without any effort, but don't bank on it. And you also have to be very realistic. It's like, Leo, you're in this situation where you are actually quite close to getting what you want, but at the same time, you're very close to being completely deluded and to completely misunderstand the situation. And maybe it's about approaching a fork in the road, as they say. So the fork in the road is about a choice. You have a decision to make, perhaps, coming up. You can go one way or the other way. If you are realistic and you understand what's expected of you, you're going to go one way, and you'll open the door. You've got a choice. You can open two doors, maybe not a fork in the road. You can open one door, you can open the other door, and behind one door is what you're looking for, and behind the other door is just delusion, chaos, and mud. Which way are you going to go down? Important choice there. And provided you don't allow yourself to be distracted, you could be distracted at the last moment, and that would be very sad. But I I don't think you need be distracted. Just believe what is right for you. And I think probably if you've got a choice coming up and you've got one choice that seems easy and you've got another choice that seems really hard work, go for the choice that is more difficult, that requires more effort on your part. And I think that is a choice to make. You make that choice and you should be able to get what you want, provided you can just keep pushing forward in the same direction. Virgo. Mercury is your ruler. Mercury is in Aries and Mercury is conjunct Chiron. I think that from a Virgo perspective, that conjunction with Chiron is actually quite important. It's a time when you're going to be able to make things better, not just for yourself, but for other people. You know, Virgo as a sign does have a reputation as being a service sign, a sign that is there to help people. It's often connected with the healing professions. Okay, I know that's a bit of a stereotype, but with Mercury, your ruler, being conjunct Chiron, I think if there's any way, shape or form in which you are a healer, then that's going to start coming to the fore. So Virgo, think about that. How can you help people? How can you heal people? And I think it's also connected with your understanding. I think you have right now a very deep understanding of what's going on, and I think you have a good understanding in terms of other people's psychology. And if anyone is bothered by something, if someone is down about something, you'll understand it, you'll get it, you'll know what it's all about, you'll be able to see it. And because of that, you're going to be able to behave appropriately, and that means being there to help people. And so do consider all that, and do consider the possibility that it is part of your short-term destiny. Perhaps you are being placed today in a particular situation where you're in a position to help, and that could happen in a spontaneous way. It could happen, I don't know, in lining up for the bus, someone you just meet, have a random meeting, just someone out there I think needs your help, and it may not be the person you expect. And I think that help is probably of a psychological nature. Just understanding someone and understanding what the problem is, though I suppose it might be of a financial nature. It could be, but when I say financial nature, I'm not talking about giving someone large amounts of money. It may be about giving them financial advice, or it may be giving them a small amount of money that you don't need, that you're quite happy to give away to them. Maybe giving $5 to someone on the street could make all the difference. That's possible with that Mercury conjunct Chiron. So do consider that. And while this is happening, I think that many Virgos are able to distance themselves from the humdrum detail of everyday life. I think you're able to get a perspective today, and I think this is all about the build up to the new moon. So tomorrow there's this new moon in Taurus. Taurus is a sign that has a strong affinity with Virgo, and so this new moon and the build up to the new moon is allowing you to create a bit of distance between some of the boring aspects of everyday living, and perhaps you're able to see the bigger picture. And perhaps that goes back to how you can help people, how you might value a small amount of money. What does that, for example, what does $5 mean in the infinity of things if you are giving someone $5? You're able to get a broader perspective, and I think that you can move away from crude self-interest. So in that sense, it's quite a serious day, and a day when you can really tune into who you are. I think you can also tune into what's going on in society at large. I think you're going to know, because you can see the details that matter, the signs that things are changing, the signs of the times. In fact, there's been quite a lot of talk when I've been looking at the comments on my channel, quite a lot of talk about omens, and omens that things aren't right. I mean, for example, the end of April, there were these 4 horses that escaped from, I think they were in London, these military, I think they were military horses, but they escaped, and apparently at the same time as Big Ben stopped. And this could be seen as an omen, a time when an indication that something is rotten with British society, or you go to I don't know what Calpurnia in Julius Caesar, she talks about all the omens leading up to Caesar's assassination, and for example, lionesses giving birth in the street. And if there are omens, Virgo, you can pick up on them. You can see the way things are going. They may be small things that no one else notices, but you can see them, and you know that these are signs that things are changing. Again, it's not about you. It's not personal. It's about society at large. And so perhaps you have a unique perspective on these omens. You can see them, the signs, and you know where things are going. You know things probably are not going to get better, and that's okay, because you're in a great position to start to prepare for the future. Libra, you do continue to have a strong sense of yourself. I think it's actually stronger than yesterday. It's getting stronger. And in fact, it's not typically Libran. I mean, Libra does have this reputation for being quite a superficial sign. I'm not saying you're superficial, by the way. I'm talking about reputation. But, Librans like to skate across the surface, don't want to upset anyone. Let's keep the balance right. But at the moment, you're not typical. It's not a typically Libran day. It's not a typically Libran time. I think that Librans do certainly understand that things are complicated, and that there are a few things in life that can be trivialized. Though I must emphasize, I'm not saying this is bad. Just because it's serious doesn't mean there's a problem. In fact, I think it's actually good, because by understanding what's happening and understanding how complicated things are, you are just in such a good position for dealing with future challenges. And looking at what's happening today, we see a conjunction between the Moon and Venus in Taurus. So Venus is your ruler. Venus is in Taurus, which is in its own sign. It's conjunct the Moon. That gives you a lot of power, and it actually gives you quite a lot of emotional power. You're able to ground yourself, and you're able to ground other people, and I think that in any social situation, you are really going to know how to behave. You won't really have to think about it. It'll be quite obvious what is expected of you, and I think because you have insights into what makes other people tick and what makes other people comfortable, you're going to be, I think in your own way, quite popular, because people are going to like you, and you won't be the kind of person who will rock the boat. Though I suppose you still could rock the boat, because right now you do understand the very foundations of things, but especially on a sort of a deep emotional level. You get it. You do understand the basic concepts of security and insecurity. You understand what would have to happen to turn everything upside down, because you have gone deep down. You get it all. And so if it so happens, Libra, that you are not happy with the way things are moving, and you feel that it's all going in the wrong direction, then you can change it all, because you're very powerful right now. If you want something to happen, you can make it happen. And in fact, if you want to destabilize things, you actually can do it. So you are very much a two-edged sword. You can be a great source of instability. As I said, people are going to trust you. You're going to be popular. People are going to be comfortable in your presence. But by the same token, some Librans may decide that this is not right, that there is a certain amount of complacency here, that things need to change. And maybe, Libra, you're going to want to reconfigure the balance. And sure, if you reconfigure the balance, then everything can change. So you have a lot of power today, but also you have a lot of responsibility. So the question is, Libra, what are you going to do? It depends, doesn't it? But whatever it is, I think you will understand its implications, and I can't see you going into any situation blind. I think you're going to know where it's all leading. So interesting day, Libra, and I hope it all works out. Scorpio. Big build up now in Taurus, which is your opposite sign. We have got 5 planets in Taurus: Venus, Moon, Sun, Uranus, Jupiter. And tomorrow there is a new moon in Taurus. So that means, Scorpio, that there may be a big emphasis on other people and on relationships, on how people get on with each other. And you may feel, Scorpio, that with this emphasis in Taurus, you may feel, Scorpio, that you do not have a great deal of control. And that's always a problem for Scorpios, because Scorpios, of all the 12 signs, Scorpio really does like to be in control. And so perhaps you need a sense of perspective. There are things that people want to do. They insist on doing them. They want to do it. They're not going to be stopped. It doesn't necessarily have to have an impact on you. Just because you yourself don't want to take direct action doesn't mean to say that you're losing control. Let other people have their fun. Let other people do what they feel they need to do. If you don't interfere, if you don't complain, then it's not really going to affect you. It's just something to observe, and you certainly should not take it personally. That's really quite important. Though relationships may matter, with this new moon tomorrow may represent a new beginning as far as relationships are concerned, and you may take the view that this is the end of a lunar cycle, because the new lunar cycle starts tomorrow with the new moon. So it might feel that certain relationships are reaching the end of a cycle. They have developed, they've grown, and in some cases they may have reached a certain point where they just couldn't get any better, and maybe they started to atrophy a little. And with this end of cycle, that may mean you have to make some decisions, or decisions could be coming up soon. So you might need to make a decision about whether you want to continue with a relationship, particularly if a relationship hasn't lasted for very long. You might consider, do you want to continue with it? Is it really worth the effort? Or maybe you may feel that it's time to change a relationship. You've gone through one cycle with a relationship and a new cycle is beginning. So what kind of cycle, what's it going to be like? So you are in a position to make those kind of changes. Another thing to consider is how you are benefiting from the important people in your life. And maybe you are underestimating the benefits of being in certain relationships. After all, today there is a conjunction between the moon and Venus. It's a great conjunction, that moon-Venus, between moon and Venus, because it's in Taurus. Venus rules Taurus. The moon is exalted in Taurus. And the implication here is that there are certain relationships which you can really benefit from, and you shouldn't take them for granted. So if you are getting sick of a particular relationship, or it's getting boring, have another look at it. Consider the ways in which it is helping you, and imagine what it would be like not to have that relationship. And so in that sense, I would suggest that you don't take people for granted, and you consider that maybe they're having a more favourable impact on you than you give them credit for. Though, while I'm saying this, it might sound as if I'm suggesting that you don't have a lot of power today, and I can understand why you might think that, because there is so much stuff going on in Taurus, your opposite sign. But still, Scorpio, you are certainly able to make things happen. The trouble is, you're not really able to make things happen in a gradual way. Asserting your influence today isn't like isn't doing it gradually. You kind of have to do it in a quite dramatic way. So if you're feeling that you are out of control, you're feeling that you don't have much control, then the only way of really getting your control back is to do something dramatic. And doing something dramatic will change everything. And yes, you'll be in control, but is it worth the effort? And do you actually need to be in control? And I think that is the big point. I don't think today you need to be in control, because if you're honest with yourself, you're not being compromised, you're not being hurt, you're not being damaged, I don't think. And so let things run. And you may actually learn from the situation, because you're able to see what people are like, and you shouldn't have judgments about what people are like. Let them behave how they like, within reason, of course, and then at a later stage you'll be able to consider what it all means. But right now, probably a good idea to be tolerant, and through your tolerance you can learn quite a lot about what people want, and whether they're really worth bothering with. Sagittarius. Sagittarius, you're feeling that things aren't moving fast enough, that things are slow, and that is kind of annoying you. You know, you'd like things to happen at a certain pace. Yeah, that's Sagittarius, you're a fire sign. But it's just not happening. And I think that you may actually be finding it really quite difficult to assert yourself in the way you'd like. Just everything is taking a long time, and delays are building up, and you might be wondering, you know, how is it going to end? When are you going to be able to really start making an impact? Well, Sagittarius, I think you just need to not be in such a hurry. You're not in a position where you can really make things happen in a big way. And also, you may have to let go of something. There may be something you're working on that you've been working on for a very long time, or perhaps been obsessed about, and you want to carry on with it. You really want to carry on with it, but it's really becoming clear it's just not happening. And maybe under those, and in that situation, you should be prepared to let go of it, because it may be a situation where you have been putting so much energy into one thing that you have been ignoring other things. So if you've been putting energy into something which is a complete non-starter, then that prevents something else from starting up. And I suppose now it's the end of a lunar cycle, new moon tomorrow. So with the end of a lunar cycle, Sagittarius, it might be a very good time to let go, because after the new moon you can start engaging in new things, something that will actually use your energy correctly, rather than being in this situation where you're struggling, I think. So look at all the things you're involved with, look at your various activities, and perhaps be ready to prune them, and perhaps be more efficient, and be ready to put new energy into something new, rather than to put sort of, I don't know, what do they say, throwing bad money after old, what do they say, throwing good money after bad. That's right, isn't it? That's what they say. So do consider how you are asserting yourself and what you regard as being important, because some of the things that you really regard as being important may not just be unimportant, but may actually be a waste of your time and energy. And it might also be a good time to be thinking outside the box. Sagittarius has a reputation for being very flexible, for going all over the place, always being keen to follow new ideas. But I think we can go too far with that idea, with that image of Sagittarius. Sagittarius as a sign can be quite moralistic, and it can reach a conclusion that there is a right way of doing things and a wrong way of doing things. And in that way, Sagittarians can get trapped. And today is actually quite a good day for releasing a lot of that, because Mercury is making a conjunction to Chiron. And for you, that conjunction between Mercury and Chiron is about being able to think outside the box. And who has created that box? The limits of that box? Well, to be honest, I think you have. You have created your own limits. And with Mercury conjunct Chiron, you have a real opportunity to move beyond those limits. Remember, Chiron is this minor planet, this comet that has a very eccentric orbit, and that's Chiron. That's the maverick. Being able to be eccentric, to be able to look beyond a situation that seems set in stone and to say, no, actually, there's another way of doing things. And you should also consider the possibility that someone else could give you advice. So if you've got a problem today or something's bothering you, then that Mercury conjunct Chiron could represent someone else who can help you, who can listen to you, who can give you some really good ideas. These ideas might not be what you were expecting, but I think that these ideas could really help to move you on. Capricorn. The Sun is making a sextile to Saturn. Saturn is your ruler, and I think that this Sun sextile Saturn really could work out for you. I think that this sextile is going to give you quite a big creative boost. You'll have a real sense of what you can do, and it may be that there's something that you thought you couldn't do, that there was no hope, but you were wasting your time, and really it's all been about application, that you haven't properly applied yourself to something, so you haven't given yourself a chance. But with this sextile between the Sun and Saturn, it's a time for giving yourself a chance, to finding out what you can do, because you perhaps have been negative about things. You say, well, what is the point? I can't do that. I don't have the ability. But you haven't tried. But when you do try, with this Sun sextile Saturn, you put in some effort, put in some energy, then I think that you will be very surprised with the results that you get. And I do think that the results will be very, very fortunate. And I think also, Capricorn, that you are in a position where you can interact with other people and involve other people with what you are doing. And it's not about you changing what you are doing because of what other people say. No, it's about you doing what you feel is right, doing what you feel is maximizing your abilities and your talents, and sharing it with other people. And these people, they're not there to criticize you. No, it's not a time to be accepting criticism or for being self-conscious. You are what you are. You are demonstrating your abilities. And I think it's very clear. And I think this is helped by the fact that the moon is now in Taurus. We've got Taurus. Remember, Taurus is an earth sign. Capricorn is an earth sign. So when you've got this build up in Taurus, I think that you can really benefit from it. In fact, you should really make the most of it, because this build up in Taurus is not going to last forever. Soon enough, these planets will move out of Taurus into Gemini. So really take advantage of it. And it is a time for showing the world and showing yourself what you can do, because you will do a really good job of it. And if you are talking about jobs, if you are working today in whatever capacity, then it's a time to be creative. Even if the job itself is completely uncreative or appears to be uncreative, you can do things your way at least to a greater extent than usual. And I do think, Capricorn, that your creativity will be very much appreciated. So don't hold back. Don't be shy about showing off what you can do. Turning to relationships, there is a conjunction between the Moon and Venus, and yes, the Sun is sextile Saturn. Those aspects, I think, should really help in terms of getting on with people. I think you'll just know how to get on with people, and in such a way that you're not going to have to compromise anything, because I suppose there's always an issue with relationships that you have to give something away. But these are the kind of relationships today where you don't have to give anything away. And there is perhaps a lightness here. I mean, that's what relationships should be like at the moment. They should be light. They should be about affirming who you are, and perhaps affirming who you are to another person, and someone realizing who you are and what kind, all the things you can do. And so that's the kind of relationship that should really prosper today, and that's really the kind of relationship you should expect. It is about you, and I don't mean that in a selfish way, but because the relationship should be about showing you in the best possible light. Today, that is. That's what it's about. And I think you can have fun with people. Again, on your terms. So I think it's going to be a good day. Remember, yesterday I was a bit downbeat about Capricorn, but I did really tell you yesterday, if you were listening to what I said yesterday, that today would be better. And I think, as you can see, today is very much going to be better. Looks like a good day for Capricorns, but it's just very important that you do things. Everything has to do things on your terms, and that you take every opportunity to be playfully creative. Aquarius. As I was saying to Capricorn, I always start Aquarians like this, because Aquarius and Saturn, I often do that. I probably shouldn't. I'm being a bit repetitive here. But Aquarius and Aquarius and Capricorn do have similarities, because they do have the same ruling planet. And today the Sun is sextile Saturn, and that sextile between the Sun and Saturn has implications for relationships in the Aquarian world. And the reason for that is very simple. It's because Saturn rules Aquarius, and so Saturn is your ruler, and the opposite sign to Aquarius is Leo, and the ruler of Leo is the Sun. So when you have got the Sun sextile Saturn, you can expect all your various relationships to work out very well. There's a sense of a shared purpose, a sense of you and someone else perhaps being engaged in a particular project. So it's, when I talk about relationships, I'm talking about relationships of all kinds. It's not just about romance. So there is a shared purpose here, and you and another person, yes, can relate very well to one another, and your interaction can, I think, be entirely constructive. But in the process, you shouldn't feel the need to do anything different. I know that Aquarius as a sign is supposed to be, very far-sighted, is interested in new ideas, is about the future. I mean, those are some of the things that people say about Aquarius, but I think a lot of that is not entirely true. We shouldn't forget that Aquarius is a fixed sign. It's ruled by Saturn. And today there is a lot of emphasis in the sign Taurus. When the sign Taurus from an Aquarian view is actually quite a low-profile sign. It's about doing things your way and not taking risks and not necessarily trying anything new. And in fact, yes, I would say don't try new things today. You don't have to. You've got enough on your plate. New things can wait until later. But at the moment, there are things you need to work through. You don't have to visit new places. I don't even think you have to visit and get in touch with new people. I think you've got the people you need, you've got the challenges you need, you've got the environment you need. Everything is there for you, and so don't feel pressurized to be original or be adventurous. No, definitely don't be adventurous today. Absolutely no point in being adventurous, especially as it's the tail end of a lunar cycle. So tomorrow we get the new moon, and so it's really the waning moon. It's the part where everything's coming to an end. So what you don't want to do, Aquarius, is to just introduce new things, because I don't think that would be very helpful. Just so concentrate on what you've got. Perhaps spend time at home, but don't forget the people you already know. Going back to that Sun sextile Saturn, I think that Sun sextile Saturn is about an existing relationship or existing relationships, and really see what you and the people you already know can do, and just make the most of it, and let other people have an influence on your life, but a stabilizing influence on your life. So if someone is helping you come down to earth and is making life less complicated, then that's the kind of person you should have around you today. What you don't want is people that are all over the place, unstable, people who are exciting, but you don't know why they're exciting because you don't really know them well enough. So you don't want that kind of people. So overall, Aquarius, I think it's going to be a good day, provided you understand your limits. And it's not a day for big adventures. It's for focusing on what you already have rather than for reaching out for anything new. Pisces, you can't expect everything to happen at the pace you would like it to happen. You might feel a bit frustrated today because when you interact with people, they're friendly enough, but they're not really giving you what you want. And if you try to assert yourself and you try to explain that this is how you want things to be, you might just be ignored, or you might feel that actually you can't really express your fundamental personality. It just doesn't seem the right environment. Don't worry about it. It's enough just to communicate. And you shouldn't really think very hard about what you're communicating or whether you're actually achieving anything by communicating, because really that's all that has to happen today. Just keep the lines of communication open, because that creates a possibility of something happening at a later stage. And we shouldn't forget that that tomorrow there is a new moon, and this new moon is going to make things a lot easier for you. It might be difficult to assert your real self today, but tomorrow is going to be different. And you therefore have to understand the times in which you are living. And I think that in that sense, it's going to be okay. Just keep your expectations low, especially when especially if you feel that you've just got something to do, you've got something to say, something really important that you've got to say. And yeah, if it's not a time for saying important things, because you're just not going to be taken seriously. People are not ready to hear what you have to say. And if you can bear that in mind, then I don't think that you are going to be disappointed. Though I can't deny the fact that there is a conjunction between the moon and Venus in Taurus. So with that conjunction between moon and Venus, I think that your relationships with other people should be okay, provided you don't expect too much. It's all about making sure that relationships are in order, that there are good lines of communication, and just a bit of small talk might be required just to make sure that you and someone else are in communication. And that someone else, it might be someone you need to be in touch with later for whatever reason. Could be money, could be business, could be friendship, it doesn't matter. Just keep those lines of communication open and practice some communication. Just test it. Maybe just call someone up just to make sure that they really are prepared to talk to you. But when you're talking to them, don't feel you have to say anything of any significance. And it might also be a good idea to pay someone a visit for no particular reason. Pay several people a visit for no particular reason, and keep it brief. Just a few minutes, because if you spend a long time with any one person, inevitably what will happen is that you will start to take that person and the communications you're having with that person more seriously. And as you take that person more seriously and that communication more seriously, the more likely it is that you're going to try to up the pace of things. You're going to try to make things happen. You're going to start to introduce material that you are interested in, that's important to you. And as soon as things start becoming important to you, that is a moment you're going to start feeling a certain sense of rejection, because because people are not really ready to deal with serious matters that matter to you. And that's what I mean by this sense of frustration, that you're just not going to be able to express what you want to express, the things that are really important to you. You're only going to be able to express things at a fairly superficial level. So Pisces, I just think it's very important that you accept that. And after the new moon, I do think that things are going to be a lot easier. Okay, those are my forecasts for the 12 signs. And now I want to look at today from the perspective of the I Ching. So I cast the coins and I ask the question, what is Tuesday going to be like for what is Tuesday going to be like for those watching the I Ching section of this video? And the first hexagram I got was treading, hexagram 10. So when we hear treading, that means treading on the tiger's tail. We have to be careful. We must try to avoid treading on the tiger's tail, because if we tread on the tiger's tail, there can be negative results. I mean, that makes sense. So we're in a situation where we have got something that we're trying to achieve, but it's difficult. It might even feel that it's a bit dangerous, and we do have to tread carefully. And it's quite likely that we will tread on the tiger's tail, though the I Ching does tell us that the tiger will bite, but we won't be hurt. There's a bit of a contradiction there. So we just have to accept the situation. And in the first instance, though, we may not actually know what we're doing. We might step forward blindly. And there may even be a lot of fear. So it might be a new situation that we're trying to make sense of. We know we have to take the initiative. We know that we have to move forward into something that we just don't understand. And inevitably, because we don't understand it, we are going to tread on the tiger's tail. And the tiger is going to roar. But I think we'll be forgiven. We'll be forgiven for those first mistakes. So the tiger will forgive us. But I suppose we're helped by the fact that we do understand that it's a dangerous situation. So because we understand that it's a potentially dangerous and risky situation, we're not going to take too many risks. And so we continue. And we have in this hexagram, we have two moving lines. We have the fourth line moving and we have the fifth line moving. So the fourth line talks about this danger that we're taking, that we don't really know what we're doing. And we perhaps make mistakes, but somehow we get forgiven. And then the fifth line moves. And with the fifth line, there is a certain contradiction about, well, I won't say contradiction, I would have said a disagreement about what that fifth line actually means. One approach to the fifth line is to say, well, we just need to be aware of the danger. That's it. We're involved in a dangerous enterprise, but we're aware of the danger, so we won't come to any harm. There is an alternative view that we reach a situation, we reach a stage where we realize that it's just too much. And because we realize that it's too much, we decide to back off. And we back off, and that might be the right thing to do, because we recognize that the situation is simply too much. But with these two moving lines, we get a transition, and the transition is to the hexagram 41, which is decrease. And this is a time where we might have to be giving something up. This might indicate that, yes, we have taken on too much. But it also, with decrease, we get the sense of sacrifice. We realize that if we want to get things done, or if we want to have a successful life, we have to give something up. Just a little bit has to be given up. Maybe a little bit of status, a little bit of control. Maybe some of our ambitions have to be given up. We've perhaps been a little too over-ambitious, and that, bearing in mind how difficult it was to get past the tiger, we have to reconsider what we wanted for ourselves and say, well, okay, do we need all that stuff? Maybe not. And so by having lower expectations, it's going to actually be easier for us to be successful. And that's I Ching. And now I want to finish this video by considering what it means for the moon to be in Taurus. So traditionally, the moon works very well in Taurus. That is because the moon is exalted in Taurus. So all things being equal, if you've got moon in Taurus, things should be good. Moon in Taurus is about being very grounded, and it's perhaps aware of financial needs, but it's also quite a sensual sign, sensual placement, moon in Taurus. We are very aware of the material environment. Touch is going to be important, and the good things in life may be important with Taurus, whether it's wine, food, entertainment, I suppose sex. All these things are associated with moon in Taurus. And it could, I suppose it could go too far. Moon in Taurus can be overindulgent. But we shouldn't forget that the moon is a feminine planet. So the moon in a woman's chart is more likely to be kept. In a male chart, it's perhaps more likely to be projected. That is a possibility. So perhaps a man with moon in Taurus is going to want to see the moon in Taurus reflected in another person, in a partner, in a wife, spouse, whatever. So that is how moon in Taurus could work. But I want to just look at it from the perspective of a group of people who have moon in Taurus, and so that we can perhaps see different ways in which the moon in Taurus might be functioning. So one person who has the moon in Taurus, who I've been talking about quite recently, is Emmanuel Macron. So there's Emmanuel Macron, born December 21st, 1977. And so he has the moon in Taurus. So how do we see this? You could simply say he is president of France. He's got moon in Taurus. The moon works well in Taurus. End of. That's all we need to say. That's one approach. We could also say, well, maybe with the moon in Taurus, and this is perhaps something I should have just said in the introduction, that the moon in Taurus in a man's chart can be about their first years, up until the age of about 22, something like that. That in the male horoscope, they really get into their moon in Taurus, and the moon in Taurus is very much who they are. I mean, I don't know. I've got moon in Aries. I feel that up until the age of 22, I was more of an Aries than a Gemini. I mean, there was much more of an Aries influence in me than the Gemini influence. I'm still a Gemini, but from my perspective. So with Macron, that moon in Taurus could be about more who he was as a younger person. And I can't help thinking that moon in Taurus had something to do with his relationship with his wife. Remember, she was his drama teacher, who he got besotted with in his teens, and never got over it. And so you could say with that moon in Taurus, there is a sort of stubbornness there, and not wanting things to change. So you can imagine moon in Taurus. You imagine teenage Emmanuel Macron with that moon in Taurus. It's quite, I suppose, sensual. He sees this drama teacher who he is attracted to. And that moon in Taurus, it sticks. That attraction, once he's got that attraction, it doesn't change. Because Taurus is a fixed sign, and it just continues, and he can't break out of it. If moon had been in a different sign, he would have been able to break out of it. Because it's moon in Taurus, he can't get out of it. And looking at the chart of Brigitte Macron, Brigitte Macron, by the way, does not have moon in Taurus, but I just wanted to look at the two just with reference to what's going on in Taurus. So there is Emmanuel Macron's moon in Taurus. Brigitte Macron has her Mars at 17 Taurus. And I suspect that is a key piece of synastry, a connection between the two. And so her Mars in Taurus, it's about her. Now, you'd have thought that she would be projecting her Mars in Taurus, but somehow that's about maybe what she's. It's a bit weird, isn't it? I mean, Mars. She's somehow projecting that Mars in Taurus onto him, and he picks up on her Mars in Taurus, and maybe that Mars in Taurus, from his perspective as a teenager, could be an assertive woman because her Mars is on his moon, but that moon is stuck, and that may be one way in which the moon in Taurus is actually working. It gets stuck on something and it just cannot move on, and that's how he ended up with this woman who is just so much older than him, because he just can't move because he's stuck. But going back to Emmanuel Macron's chart, when you look at any chart with moon and when we look at anything, you do have to look at the wider chart, and he has the moon in Taurus opposition Uranus. So with Mars on the T, the moon, wherever the moon is, it's about anger. It can be about anger, particularly if it's opposition Uranus and square Mars. Here is someone who gets angry about something and it cannot let go. If you've been looking at Emmanuel Macron recently, he's been obsessing about threatening to send French troops to Ukraine. He just goes on and on about it. So if the Russians break through, I'm going to send troops, we're going to send NATO troops, French troops. He cannot let go. And the moon, he doesn't stop. That can be one aspect of moon in Taurus. It doesn't stop. Once it gets stuck into a particular emotional state, it just keeps going. But that's Emmanuel Macron. Someone else with moon in Taurus is Joe Biden. Joe Biden has his moon at 0 degrees 59 Taurus. Now, one criticism that people make of Biden is his inappropriate touching, isn't that right? Getting too close, particularly to women, even to people, even to sort of children, sort of caressing a hair or something, and it just seems incredibly inappropriate, and people have made remarks about that. But that might just be moon in Taurus, and that may just perhaps excuse it. So moon in Taurus is quite sensual. It's about touching, and so the feel may be very important. So when he's on camera, touch in it with inappropriate touching, and I think there are all these films of it. People sort of use that to criticize him and make all these outrageous suggestions about him and what kind of a person he is. But maybe it's just moon in Taurus. Moon in Taurus is a very touchy sign, as in likes touching things, touching people, perhaps in an inappropriate way. But that's just maybe how the moon in Taurus is actually working. Moon in Taurus, another person with moon in Taurus is Charles III. Moon in Taurus can't let go, can it? And I'm thinking about Charles and Camilla. So he had this relationship with Camilla, and then he found Diana, but he couldn't let go of Camilla. And Camilla just kept turning up, didn't she? And he couldn't. So he has this affair with Camilla while he's married to Diana. Of course, Diana was having her own affairs, but Charles, with this moon in Taurus, it's like with with Emmanuel Macron. Emmanuel Macron, as a teen, got obsessed with his drama teacher, and he couldn't let go. And it may be the same thing with Charles III. Moon in Taurus can't let go. He had this relationship with Camilla. Yes, the relationship broke up, but it wasn't, I think that she wanted to get married, and he was, I don't know the details, but for one reason or another it didn't happen. But he didn't let go, and that may be how Moon in Taurus may be working in this case. And letting go, I mean, talking about letting go, Prince Harry finds it very difficult to let go, doesn't he? Prince Harry, Moon in Taurus, it's like with Moon in Taurus, you are getting stuck on what happened in the past with Moon in Taurus. So Harry, if you look at Harry's, all his law cases against newspapers, about what happened in the past. Journalist killed his mother. No, it wasn't a drunk driver. It was these people killed his mother. All his imagined slights in the past, that William got a bigger bedroom or whatever. That might be a sense of Moon in Taurus not being able to let go, particularly as it's on the IC in Harry's chart, right on the IC. So things from a distant past keep coming up, and as with Macron, his drama teacher, and whenever he married her. That's classic Moon in Taurus. But here with Prince Harry, I think there is a certain tendency there to be stuck in the past. Now, the Moon in Taurus can be about seeing everything, though, in a material sense. And that brings us on to the subject of Karl Marx. So, Karl Marx is one of the founders of communism, and one of the bases of communism is dialectical materialism. You see everything in terms of material relationships and how they change. It's all about economics. It's all about, if you've ever tried to read Das Kapital, it just goes on and on and on. It's loads and loads and loads of economic data about what cotton workers were being paid. Just in the 19th century, even the 18th century, it's all about the material world. And it's all about the material relationships, the material economic relationships between people. And that is the basis of his philosophy. So it's not surprising that he has the Moon in Taurus. In fact, he was born on just before a new moon eclipse. There you can see new moon eclipse was very, North Node at 8 Taurus, Moon at 11 Taurus, Sun at 13 Taurus, and so that's what we need. That's how Moon in Taurus can actually work. Just being obsessed with material values. Someone else who was born with a new moon in Taurus was Tucker Carlson. So there is that similarity between Tucker Carlson and Karl Marx. Of course, Tucker Carlson is not a communist as far as I know. And in terms of that new moon, I would have said that it may say something about the way he conducts himself. I mean, I haven't looked at his biography in detail, but he likes to be very focused on simple facts. He likes to keep it simple, doesn't he? And have this illusion of keeping it simple in terms of his argument. Just focus on the simple facts and don't go beyond them. And using that to sort of leverage his arguments and his and his polemic. It's about common sense. I think at least how he sees it as being common sense. I mean, people from the right tend to be really obsessed with common sense. It's a common sense thing, and so that's how his new moon works. But his new moon, he was born just as the moon was waxing, was just after the new moon, so it's a waxing moon. When you're looking at the moon, I suppose you also need to think about the lunation cycle, and people who are born at the new moon, it's very much about the beginning of something. They treat life as if it is the beginning, as if there's a wonderful world out there to experience. You know, perhaps from a karmic point of view, it's like we have spirals. So as we go through our thousands of incarnations, if that's the way it is, we go through a spiral from new moon to new moon, and when we've completed one cycle, we move to the next spiral. I don't know, that sounds a very glib and primitive way of doing things, but perhaps from a perspective of Tucker Carlson, you know, it's all a wonderful world out there, and he is just having fun with it. So that might be how his moon in Taurus is actually working. But I don't know a great deal about Tucker Carlson. But he likes to appear to focus on common sense, and so people on the left and progressives to show that their view is just defies common sense. Someone else, Queen Elizabeth I. She's generally regarded as, well, by many people regard her as Britain's best monarch. I suppose that would be because you know, the English Renaissance flowered in her reign, and you know, you had Shakespeare. Shakespeare was a Taurus, by the way, I think. So you had drama and music, and you had a cultural blossoming in her reign, and of course she stayed in power, and she was queen in a very difficult time. She survived, and she was known as the Virgin Queen, which is not surprising for someone who has a sun in Virgo, but she had, yes, a moon in Taurus, and that moon in Taurus might actually be about expenditure. I believe that she spent a lot of money, and she did actually quite like the good things in life. I seem to remember when I was doing a history class at school, someone said that her annual wardrobe budget was £10,000. And for the beginning of the 17th century, £10,000 is a lot of money. I think that would equate to at least a million pounds now. So she spent a lot of money on clothes and whatever, and by the time when James I became James VI of Scotland became James I, I think that England's finances were actually a complete disaster, and maybe that was because of Queen Elizabeth I, that she just overspent. I mean, I suppose that's what monarchs often do. They want to have as much money as possible to spend. So that might be her moon in Taurus, and yeah, spending so much on just things, including clothes. But a reminder that it's a female chart. That moon in Taurus is not going to be projected. She didn't get married. She didn't have any children. That moon did not get projected. And it's a female planet. And simply, it's fortunate. Exalted moon, conjunct the IC, assuming that time is right. I think it is actually right. So she's got that on the IC, so that gives stability and security to her throne. And anything else? Any other chart that I want to look at? Finally, Nayib Bukele. He is president of El Salvador, and he has moon at 0 degrees Taurus. And so you could say that moon in Taurus likes to keep it simple. So if you are president of a country which has got a high crime rate, what do you do? Now, if you are a liberal progressive, well, you might have, I don't know, you set up, maybe you set up youth clubs so that children don't get involved in crime, or you consider rehabilitation, and you make prisons more humane. But Moon in Taurus just says, no, let's keep it simple. Let's just throw everyone in prison. To keep it simple. Let's not worry about progressive details. We're going to just chuck everyone in prison. He's got a very good moon, by the way. His moon is not just in Taurus, but he's born at night. So moon, nighttime, likes being a planet. It likes being at night. It works very well at night. It's above the horizon. It's a feminine planet in a feminine sign. Moon in Taurus. So he's very good at projecting himself to the El Salvador people. And that simple approach, Moon in Taurus, keep it simple. Throw everyone in prison. Throw criminals in prison. It would appear to have worked. The crime rate in El Salvador has collapsed. And that may be how Moon in Taurus works. Just keep it simple. It's like with Karl Marx. You focus on the material details. You don't complicate things with emotional, religious, spiritual, moral things. You just keep it simple. And I think that is perhaps the secret of Nayib Bukele's popularity and, for the moment, his success. And it does help if we look at the horoscope of El Salvador. When El Salvador came into being on September the 15th, 1821, you can see that the moon is in Taurus. So the moon represents the people. And so if you are a president, or you're standing for presidency with the moon in Taurus, then you have an immediate rapport with the people of the country your country you're governing. So at some level, El Salvador, moon in Taurus, what it really wants is looking for simple solutions. We've got crime, we throw everyone in prison. And here is Nayib Bukele. That's what he does. And so far, he seems to be very successful at it. And that's it with Moon in Taurus. I hope you found that of some use and you found it of some interest. And if you enjoyed this video, I would be very grateful if you were to like it. If you're not subscribed, I'd be really grateful if you were to subscribe, obviously, provided you liked the video. And if you want to buy me a coffee, there is a link in the description. So thank you very much for listening, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.